summary of session 2 of our free PMP training, which took place on Wednesday, 5th of February from 7 to 10 p.m. GMT +1. It was actually quite a fruitful session, and like people enjoyed it. There was a lot of positive feedback after the session, especially that the problem with the microphone, which we had the session on, was fixed. So actually, first of all, let me give you a summary of session 2, and then we can go through the details. So the total duration was about 3 hours. We went through around 74 slides. We covered 29 PMP practice questions in the chapters, plus 10 chapter test questions. Those were the test questions of the chapter 1, including a drag and drop question. Okay, so in session 2 we went through section 1.3, which was an introduction to Waterfall and Agile, and then we started the people domain with chapter 2, the stakeholders, and we went through section 2.1, which was identifying stakeholders. Okay, so as usual, I will give you a summary and the top 10 slides of the session, and then the top 5 questions picked from the session. So we started the session with a recap of the previous session, where we summarized what we saw in session 1. Then we started the section 1.3, an intro to Waterfall and Agile. And we went through the important notes of Waterfall, where we explained that Waterfall actually has got different names, like traditional project management, classical project management. The most used term in the PMP exam is the predictive project management, and we explained why. It's called also plan-based, linear approach, etc. Waterfall has got 3 main characteristics, which we have explained them yesterday, even though that was just an intro. We will go back to Waterfall and Agile in more details in chapter 4 and 5. But the Waterfall has got 3 main characteristics. First of all, the requirements and the scope should be defined upfront, so we can have a full project plan. And the Waterfall doesn't really like having any uncertainties. Second characteristic is that once the plan is established, changes will have to go through a change management process, because making any changes to the baselines is not easy. Okay, and the third characteristic is that the delivery of the deliverables happens at the end of the project, generally overall in the Waterfall. Okay, then we also went in details in this famous table, the process groups table. Actually, I went through this table from the PMBOK 6, page 62, and I explained to the people that actually the similar table exists in the PMI process guide, which was released around 2 years ago. But still, myself personally, I enjoy this table from the PMBOK 6 because it covers all the 10 knowledge areas of the project, Waterfall project, of course. With the group of processes in each of the steps in the project or phases in the project, like here, we went through the processes that take place in the initiating of the project, the processes that take place in the planning of the project, the processes that take place in the executing of the project, the processes that take place in the monitoring and controlling of the project, and the processes that take place in the closing of the project. So we went through all these 49 processes one by one. I explained them briefly, of course, in about 15-20 minutes, because then we will see each one of these processes in details in our training presentation. Since this table and its processes, which are very important for like general project management, Waterfall project management, general practices, they cover around 30-40% of the questions in the PMP exam. Then I try to briefly introduce Waterfall, few aspects, few practices from Waterfall. Like we went through the project charter, we saw the template of the project charter. I explained what's a kickoff meeting. I also explained what's a project management plan. Okay, and mainly the 3 baselines. Explained that project management plan is a document which contains all the 9 sub plans, like scope management plan, or schedule management plan, the cost management plan, the quality management plan, resources management plan, communications management plan, risk management plan, procurement management plan, and stakeholders engagement plan. Okay, and I have explained that those 9 management plans, and of course the the overall one, like which is coming from the integration, is the project management plan. Okay, as we see here, like this overall one from the project integration management, like developing the project management plan. And I explained that out of those 9 basic plans, there are 3 baselines. Okay, and those 3 baselines, they are the ones which we explained in session one, about the constraints. So the scope baseline, the schedule baseline, and the cost baseline, and these baselines will serve later on, as control tool for measuring the performance. Okay, all right. Then we went briefly, into the various briefly about, details about what's the main component of the scope baseline, which is WBS. What's the main component of the schedule baseline? Probably it's a Gantt chart, maybe, and then the most important component of the cost baseline, which is how to calculate it. Actually, we went through that. Okay, and of course, we had questions in between, the different slides. Then after that, we moved on to a brief introduction, to the Agile. So first of all, we started with the Agile manifesto. I have explained how, this Agile manifesto came to the world exactly like almost 24 years ago, in February 2001, and I explained, like, how these 17 people who gathered in that ski resort, they said that they appreciate, the waterfall approaches, but they prefer like more more like let's say, more like adaptive approaches. And they said that, what, yeah, having process and tools is important probably in Waterfall, but for us we value more, having a self-organized, collaborative team members, cross-functional. Okay, so we focus more on people and the interactions between them. Then they said, yeah, what, sometimes documentation is important in project management, but for us, we prefer to focus more on creating working product increments and delivering them to the customer. They said that they value more customer collaboration because they need feedback from the customer, and the success of the project depends on the collaboration between the team and the customer, more than, spending time on negotiating contract and be limited by the contract. And also they said that for them it's very important to welcome changes, to be adaptive, rather than following a strict plan without taking into consideration what's happening around them. Okay, I also explained how, Agile is coming from the bigger family of, the lean philosophy, which is about continuous improvement. I also explained, how Kanban serves both in operational work and project work. Okay, then, we saw the 12 Agile principles, which is, you can find it on the Agile Manifesto's official website, where, the principles focus a lot on, face-to-face communication, customer collaboration, the frequent delivery, welcoming changes, technical and business people work together, measuring the progress, in terms of value being delivered, some of these principles are software specific, like, having good design, like focusing only on what really gives value to the customer, to adapt, to the changes, etc. Okay, then, I also, showed a couple of slides, with various agile methods, which are applicable, to small project teams, and scaled approaches which are applicable to larger teams, such as the SAFe, the less for the scaled approaches, the Scrum of Scrums for scaled approaches, and for the team approaches, I explained a little bit, about the Scrum, the Kanban, the feature-driven development, etc. Okay, and then, I shared important notes, like summarize the agile approaches. Of course, this is just an intro. Okay, we will have full chapters, especially chapter 4 about agile. So, Agile actually can be called change-driven approach, iteration-based approach, but mainly the term that is used in the PMP exam is adaptive project management, like the adaptive approach. And it's got 3 main characteristics. First of all, whenever we start an iteration, we will have a plan just for that iteration. We don't plan in advance. Changes are very welcome in Agile, even late in development. And, in Agile, we need to create and deliver value throughout the project. And I have really explained and emphasized on, being agile and doing agile, like practicing some agile techniques is not the same as really being agile in the mindset. Okay, then This slide here, I think it was one of the most important slides in the entire training presentation, because it really explains the shape and the difference in the shape and the form between the waterfall project management and the agile project management. We can see that the waterfall is a linear approach, where we move from one phase to one phase to another, until we reach the end of the project and we deliver the big result at the end. However, the agile is built in form of iterations, like time intervals, cycles. Each one of them is between 1 week and 4 week long, and each one of them has got the same repeating steps until we reach better results of the deliverables. Okay, so the iteration in the first day starts with the planning meeting for that iteration. So in that day, the team plans what they will do in that iteration. Then they start implementing their plan. Every day they have a 15-minute meeting to discuss and to share their updates. Actually, they don't discuss, but to share their updates. And the last day of the iteration is to demonstrate to the customer what they have built, and then to reflect on their work and try to improve. And we can see that from one iteration to the other, the results are improving, and they are improving based on the customer's feedback, adapting to changes, etc. Okay. We also explained that in order for an adaptive project to succeed, everyone really should embrace agile and try agile, not just the project manager but also the team and the stakeholders. Okay. Then after that, we had the chapter 1 summary and tips and tricks. Of course, these are probably the most important thing out of each chapter, because usually after each chapter we have those 3 to 5 slides of summary and tips and tricks, which once you collect all the tips and tricks of all the chapters, then I think you can make it. You can pass the exam. And then of course we had the chapter 1 10 test questions. I tried to give the attendees about 10 to 15 seconds to think. Of course, I read the question. Okay, and then I gave them 10 to 15 seconds to pick an answer, and then I moved on. So remember, guys, per question in the PMP exam, per question you have 77 seconds. Okay, 1 minute and 17 seconds. 1 minute and 17 seconds, for reading, understanding, and answering. And I try to follow that rule with you in the chapter 10 test questions. So for long questions, I know, for example, it took me 40, 50 seconds to read it. Then I gave you probably around 20 seconds to think and answer. For short questions, which took me, let's say, 20, 25 seconds to read, I gave you a little less, because I know sometimes they're easy, they're straightforward. So yeah, I try to apply the rule of 77 seconds with you per question. Then we started the second domain, which is the people domain. Okay, I first of all tried to explain who are the people in the project, and I explained that the people in the project are generally the stakeholders and the team. The team is always composed of the project manager, maybe people helping the project manager with project management work. This is in Waterfall mainly, and then the development team or the execution team, the other team members. The stakeholders, they start, from the sponsor to the customer, the user, the partners, the vendors, PMO, regulating bodies sometimes, other stakeholders, etc. And I have explained that the sponsor is like, at the same time, like very close to the team, because the sponsor provides guidance and support, and at the same time is part of the stakeholders. Okay. Then, we started the chapter 2, which is the stakeholders. Team will be the chapter 3. So we started chapter 2, which is the stakeholders. Section 2.1, identifying stakeholders. So actually, we explained this slide. So who is a stakeholder? Okay, we said the stakeholder is anyone who could have any one of these 3 characteristics. Okay, either this person or this party is interested or maybe involved in the project, and or they can influence the progress or the work being executed in the project. Like they could block the work, they could facilitate the work, and or they could be impacted by the deliverables or the results or the outcomes of the project. Okay, so if anyone could have any of these characteristics, then that person qualifies, or that party qualifies to be identified as a stakeholder. And we explained how you as a project manager could identify stakeholders. So generally you could start by asking the sponsor, maybe some experts, or you can check, the stakeholders register from previous projects, similar projects. Okay, so you could like know who were the stakeholders in that previous project. Maybe you could read the business case. Sometimes the business case provides insights on who could be or should be identified as a stakeholder, or you can probably check the organizational process sets. Sometimes, and I have given examples, okay, in the session how OPAs are asking the PMO could provide you with a list of stakeholders. Okay, so I think this slide is very important. And then, of course, we went through the role of the project sponsor. We went through and I explained it very well. It's such an important role. Many questions in the PMP exam will be covering the role of the sponsor in one way or another. We explained who is the customer and what's the difference between a customer and a sponsor, when the sponsor and the customer cannot be the same person, and when they can be the same person, and what to do in each case. Then we explained, the need of having a steering board or a steering committee, and I explained that for small projects, it's enough to have a sponsor. For large projects, we need to have a steering committee. Okay, and we explained what's a steering committee, etc. We also explained what's a change control board, and we explained that this board in Waterfall projects reviews the change requests. Okay, and then of course we went also through the stakeholders register, and I showed the template. I shared the template and explained to the people who joined the session how to use the template, of the stakeholders register, and how to, for example, to define the level of power and interest. It was quite an interesting session. Okay, and then as usual, here are the 5 top practice questions we have picked for you, out of the session. As I said, we have a total of 39 questions in that session. We picked the top 5 practice questions. These top 5 practice questions don't include that any of the questions from the 10 chapter test questions. No, those were picked from the 29 in chapter questions. Okay, so question 1: to avoid the frustration of wasted time and resources, a project manager relies on the project management plan before the project begins. So which of the following statements is true regarding the project management plan? It identifies and authorizes the project manager to initiate the project. It is a detailed project schedule that defines tasks, dependencies, and key milestones. It is a formal document that outlines how the project will be managed, or it is part of the executing process group. Now, in this session, we have clearly explained to you that the project management plan actually is a document which contains all the 9 sub-plans, and it explains for each knowledge area or for each domain how it will be managed. Okay, answer A, that's the project charter. Okay, answer B, that's a project plan. Okay, and answer D actually is wrong, because the project management plan is built during the planning process group, not the executing process group. Second question: a project manager is leading a waterfall project to develop a new financial reporting system. The project has well-defined phases, and changes to requirements are strictly controlled. However, during the testing phase, a key stakeholder requests significant modifications to the system's features. Now, what should the project manager do first? Implement the requested changes to meet stakeholder expectations, inform the stakeholder that changes are not allowed in waterfall projects, evaluate the impact of the requested changes on scope, schedule, and cost, or escalate the issue to the project sponsor for resolution. Now, here we have a key stakeholder is requesting significant modifications. Now, let me explain to you PMI's mindset. In such situations, whenever we need to take an important decision because it impacts the business benefits or it impacts baselines, we need to review, we need to assess, we need to understand the impact. Okay, we cannot tell the stakeholder that changes are not allowed in waterfall. That's wrong. We don't need to escalate the issue to the sponsor. We don't have to do that. Okay, and we cannot implement the requested change immediately, like straightforward. First, we need to analyze, evaluate the impact on the baselines, like the scope, the schedule, and the cost, and then we can raise this to the CCB and then get their approval. Okay, so that's the right answer. Third question: an organization decides to develop an innovative system to control the quality of its products. The project manager assigned to the project opted for an agile approach. Why did the project manager make this choice? To avoid change requests as much as possible, to avoid scope creep as much as possible, to get feedback as early as possible, to complete the project as early as possible. Now, if the project manager opted for an agile, that's because they would like to get feedback as early as possible so they can adapt, to whatever changes. Okay, agile is not about avoiding changes or Jane also will not make you complete the project as early as possible. No. Okay. Also, it's not about avoiding scope creep, which is the uncontrolled expansion of the scope. No, it's really out of these answers, it's to get feedback as early as possible. We will go through this in more details in chapter 4. Okay. Fourth question. A customer reviewed a product and requested additional features that were not included in the original project scope. What should the project manager do to properly manage the customer's request? Build the product according to the previously agreed scope and reject any additional requests. Discuss the feasibility and impact of the new requirements with the customer before making any decisions. Break down work on additional features with existing team members and assign tasks immediately. Release increments of the additional features without formalizing changes to maintain agility. Okay, now here we have a customer who's asking for additions which were not part of the original scope. Now, what should the PM do to properly manage the customer's requests? Okay, well, something for sure. As usual, we need to discuss the impact of adding these new requirements on the different plans we have before making any decisions. Because in PMI's mindset, before taking any decisions, make sure you have all the information. Everything's clear in front of you. Don't take hasty decisions. Don't take quick decisions without analyzing, without understanding the impact. Okay? Building the product according to the agreed the previously agreed scope? No, because there are changes here. Okay, and rejecting any requests, additional requests? No. Breaking the work and additional features with the team and assign tasks immediately? No. We explained why. Release increments of the additional features without formalizing changes? No. Well, it says, yeah, it's good to maintain agility, but this is not in our case here. Okay. And the last question we picked for you guys, from session 2, during the execution of a project within an operations function, the project manager encounters scope changes and delays in the delivery of critical tasks. How should the project manager address this situation? Communicate the concerns to the project management office during the weekly project reports. Call for a team meeting to decide if the changes should be included, initiate the change request to modify the scope and adjust the timelines, or conduct an impact analysis and present the results to the CCB for approval. Now, we have picked this question, and as we have explained to you in session 2, because sometimes in the PMP exam you face questions which confuse you. You read all the answers and say, what? Most of these answers apply. There could be a solution here, to address the situation. Okay. But which one to pick? Well, you know what? What's the situation here? The project manager encounters scope changes and possible delays in the delivery of critical tasks. So, how to handle this? Now, definitely, involving the PMO and mainly during the weekly project reports. Well, that's not how things work. First of all, those are weekly project reports for reporting, and then the PMO, we don't really need to involve them in here. But answers B, C, D, probably each one of them could apply. Like, have a team meeting, discuss it together, and see if changes should be included, or initiate a change request to modify the scope, adjust timelines, or conduct an impact analysis and present the results to the CCB. Well, you know what? Answer D is the most complete, the better formulated one, actually, the most complete, the clearest one. Okay, what we do here, for such changes and delays, let's have an impact analysis, present this to the CCB, and the CCB, they will take the decision what to do regarding these changes. Okay, so these were our top 5 questions from the session. Of course, the session 3 will start, we will continue in chapter 2 with section 2.2, and then we will start chapter 3, the team. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned with more information and more sessions.